an important habit, that there is no excuse. And as you say, if it's financial, there's places to get help, and so much of it is, well, they were only out of the seat for a second.
That's all
or
it takes.
They were crying, so I picked her up. There are so many ways that people can get them. The bad part is they are very difficult to install properly. But you think about it, if you bought the kid a bike, you'd spend all night on Christmas putting the thing together. Take the time, go out, read the instructions. They can go to, I know Safety Belt Safe USA has a website. I think it's safetyseat.org.
Right, and they have training sessions. They have observations. You can go and have your car seat fitted. And now some of the car companies are also doing safety checks.
Well, I know General Motors does.
General Motors does. Ford does. Some of the Chrysler dealerships are. And Mercedes and BMW are also doing it. So you drive in and have your car seat checked. I mean, it's just not worth not taking care of that, making sure that child is in that car correctly. And the other issue for young children is pedestrians in cars. There are, now with the SUVs that sit up so high, we've had several incidents of parents backing over their children in driveways. They don't see them. They're crawling. They're tiny. We have to be vigilant. Children are little. And the other thing is their perception. A child thinks if it sees the car sees it. So they don't really get it, how difficult it is to manipulate around cars. And I think parents don't realize either. It takes 24 skills for a child to know how to cross a street safely. So certainly a 5-year-old can't do it. Probably a 10-year-old can very well. But we keep hearing about at school sites, for example, parents slow down to drop a child out at school, and they get out and they're between cars and they're not visible. So it's really important for the adults to take the responsibility in this issue and know that children as pedestrians do require some supervision. And, once in a while it doesn't hurt to walk your child to school or walk them around and show them, what the hazards are, and to teach them by your own good behavior. I see adults all the time racing across the street. They'll go cross the street in the middle of a block, and they've got a toddler behind them that they're taking with them. That's not, not cool and not good.
Well, a lot of times the parents, I have heard anyway, that they overestimate the child's ability, and part of it, I'm sure, is, well, it's just like with choking risks, where they say, well, not for children under 8 years of age. And they say, well, yeah, but my child's an intelligent 6-year-old. How can parents kind of monitor themselves and say, well, yes, my child is brilliant and imminently trainable, but how can they kind of rein themselves in and remind themselves?
But remember, no matter how brilliant your child is, these are motor skills. These are connecting motor skills with cognitive behavior. And no matter how brilliant your child is, they don't have the experience. I mean, just even if you have to think of it that way, they don't have the experience to know what cars really mean. We have a program for preschool children teaching them pedestrian skills, and the real focus of the program is the parents. And at the beginning of the program, we've done some pre- and post-testing in this program. The parents believe that their child can cross the street. They know how. By the end of the program, you will see their answers change dramatically, because it's really apparent, no matter how brilliant your child is, they're still a child, and they still need both motor and cognitive skills, and to be able to put them together. And certainly a 5- or 6-year-old can't do that.
Well, relative to the motor skills, there's been an unfortunate rash lately of some children being left in cars. One of the problems is you have the theft-proof door locks. The child just cannot negotiate that lock. They don't have the motor skills. And there's been a couple of stories in the news where there's been deaths or near deaths.
That is such, that's got to be so devastating for a parent. It's like anything else, because parents know better. You cannot run in for 5 minutes, or 2 minutes. You do not know what's going to happen when you get out of that car. And I mean, most people wouldn't leave their dog in a car, particularly in this weather. You cannot leave children in cars. Children have been known to release brakes. They climb out of a car seat. They move around inside the car. They can't get out of the car, and they're sitting there. I mean, aside from just the heat, I think you told me, what does the temperature do in a car?
I think in 20 minutes it's 120 degrees, and in 40 minutes it's 140 degrees.
And you can fry an egg at 140 degrees?
You could cook an egg at 140 degrees.
So imagine in Southern California, particularly this time of year, what that's like to leave a child in a car. There's an organization working strongly and working very hard to make people aware of this issue. But you'll hear people say, I mean, I've heard people say it myself, I just got to go, take me 1 second. No, you can't count on it being 1 second. You can't leave children in cars.
So what part of it is parents says, well, what am I going to do with the child? My response is kind of like, so don't put milk in your coffee tomorrow morning. Yeah. Forget it, go and get it later. But
exactly, or take the child in with you. I don't know where, I mean, I can't imagine that if you're running into the market, you're going into a fast food, wherever you might be going, you're going into a cleaner, take the child with you. Just take them.
It makes such perfect sense. It's like, don't leave them. But it's difficult to, I think sometimes it's just difficult to say, they're fragile.
They are fragile. They're not just little adults. They are not just little adults.
Yeah, they seem so resilient, and they fall down there. They just boink, and when they, kids heal so fast and everything. I think so much of the time. Same thing with so much of this. It's just, they've been fine thus far, and people tend to plan for the best rather than for the worst.
Well, I don't think you have to plan for the worst, but I do think you've got to be vigilant. I mean, children are so precious, and we are the adults. I mean, they depend on us. They can't do these things by themselves. If we don't take care of them, who's going to? And these are all so preventable. The things we're talking about are things that don't have to happen. You just cannot, and if you have a child, that child has got to be the most precious thing in the world to you, and you cannot, forget that they are children. They're not small adults.
Now, another issue, and I think particularly in East LA with the older buildings, and the older buildings that are built with the low sills. Mm-hmm. My understanding is that falls are a great risk for children.
Falls are the leading cause of hospitalization for every age group. It's not the leading cause of death, but that's the most common reason children and adults, too, are hospitalized from an injury, and it's usually because of a fall. But children fall downstairs. They can fall in those baby walkers that we hope nobody's using anymore.
Or the ones with the wheels where they
and they can get to the stairs and just go down. Falls are really dangerous, and they can fall from a height. They can fall just off a table, off a couch. Kids fall, and of course the broken bones and those kinds of injuries occur. But the biggest danger, of course, is a head injury. And that's something that we really, really do not know enough about for those sort of minor head injuries, what the real implications are in the sequela later on.
Now, so many of our houses in for instance, the West Valley, low, flat ranch, mm-hmm. You don't even think of there being risks for falls. But then as you walk out the patio, there's 2 concrete steps. You walk out the front door, there's 3 concrete steps. How could someone encourage a parent to be a little more vigilant as far as the risks? I mean, how can that doesn't look like much of a risk. What are things you should do though, just as far as like with the patio doors or the front doors, or if you have a 2-story house? Yeah,
I mean, I believe strongly in gates around steps. I believe in keeping doors locked if a child goes out the door, or at least so a child can't open. If a child goes out the door, somebody needs to be there to watch. I mean, there are some kids who seem like they trip over everything and they fall over everything. But the fact of the matter is those stairs a couple of stairs are probably, particularly if there's grass on the other side of it, may not look like a risk and may not seem